A mistress threatens a pregnant wife using her child. A billionaire slaps her in public without hesitation. From a moment the porcelain teacup shattered on the polished marble floor, tensions soared in Redwood Mansion. People whispered about a scandal so immense it threatened to topple even the loftiest social circles. Behind gilded gates and guarded secrets, one woman's unwavering love collided with another's fierce ambition. The consequences were potentially devastating for everyone involved. Betrayal and loyalty danced in a precarious waltz while a quiet baby's fate hung in the balance. Tonight, we unveil the twisted drama behind these closed doors. A story of a pregnant wife, a menacing mistress, and a powerful millionaire unafraid to dish out swift justice. Sunlight streamed into the grand foyer of Redwood Mansion, illuminating its intricate mosaic floors and elaborate chandeliers. The estate was an architectural marvel designed by European artisans, each tile laid with an almost obsessive precision. Outside, acres of manicured gardens boasted roses so red they seemed unreal, as if carefully curated to symbolize the house's status and wealth. People in the neighborhood often referred to Redwood Mansion in hushed tones, placing it on an unreachable pedestal that only the truly elite could aspire to. James Redwood, the owner of this opulent home, was born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but he had also built his empire far beyond inherited wealth. Now in his late 30s, with broad shoulders and a meticulously tailored suit, he emanated a quiet authority that rarely wavered. James had been married for 3 years to the gentle and sophisticated Sophie Redwood. Their lavish wedding had been the talk of the town, attended by politicians, celebrities, and high society names from around the globe. Yet, despite the public fanfare, few outside their inner circle knew how deeply they cared for each other. James respected Sophie's quick mind and compassionate spirit. Sophie, in turn, admired his determination and generosity. For a while, their union seemed the very picture of success. However, the Redwood household harbored a tumultuous secret, one destined to break the fragile peace they had so carefully guarded. That morning, as Sophie, 6 months pregnant, walked through the marble-floored corridor, she heard the sharp sound of porcelain cracking against the tiles. Rushing into the drawing room, she found Bella Lansing, her husband's longtime mistress, holding the remnants of a teacup, shards strewn around her expensive stiletto heels. Bella was breathtaking, with cascading black hair and a figure that turned heads wherever she went. Originally an up-and-coming singer, her reputation now stemmed more from scandal than any real artistic achievement. The tabloids had carried whispers of Bella Lansing and James Redwood for over a year, but it was always framed as rumor. Now, with Bella's unannounced presence inside Redwood Mansion, there was no denying the intimacy of her relationship with James. She gripped the broken teacup tightly, rage flashing in her eyes. Her boldness was as stunning as it was terrifying, and Sophie immediately sensed the threat lurking beneath that elegant facade. "You should watch where you're going," Bella snapped, her voice controlled but brimming with anger. "This house might be yours legally, Sophie, but don't forget that James calls me whenever he needs real passion, not a dull conversation." The words hit Sophie like a physical blow. She tried to maintain her composure, focusing on the well-being of her unborn child. Internally, panic stirred. She had discovered hints of James's infidelity before he had a lipstick stain on his collar, a flirty message on his phone, but never had she seen Bella so brazen. Seeing the mistress inside her home felt like an invasion, a direct assault on everything she believed her marriage to be. "I'm asking you to leave," Sophie managed, her voice trembling only slightly. "James wouldn't appreciate you barging in here without an invitation." Bella let out a derisive laugh. "Invitation? I have something far more binding than a simple invitation. James's heart. Don't act as if you're in control just because you have his ring." She tossed the broken porcelain onto the table, leaving it in a small pile of ivory fragments. At that moment, James himself appeared in the doorway. He surveyed the scene, the trembling Sophie, Bella's smug expression, and the shattered teacup. The entire scenario must have felt like a bomb had gone off in his carefully curated world. Silence, thick and suffocating, smothered the air. Instinctively, James moved towards Sophie as though to protect her, but Bella's piercing stare froze him. "I was just leaving," Bella announced, picking up her designer handbag. "But don't forget that I have more to give you than she ever will." With those chilling words, Bella glided out of the room. In her wake, she left a tension so high Sophie could almost hear the crackle of animosity. James tried to steady himself before going to Sophie, yet he remained silent, offering no reassurance or explanation. His hesitation spoke volumes. Unbeknownst to them, a family friend, Karen Smith, stood just outside the door, having witnessed the tumultuous encounter. Karen had known Sophie since they were teenagers and was one of the few people she trusted implicitly. Quietly, she slipped away, deciding it would be best to let James and Sophie deal with the immediate aftermath alone. Still, Karen's heart pounded at the thought of Sophie's fragility. 6 months pregnant and now forced to confront a threatening mistress who clearly had no qualms about walking into Redwood Mansion, unannounced and unapologetic. In the coming hours, that single moment would throw everyone's life into chaos. Late in the evening, Sophie sat in her private suite, a place designed to be a sanctuary, a calm, pastel-colored room overlooking the estate's rose garden. Yet, no tranquility seemed possible now. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Bella's triumphant smirk, heard the shattering porcelain echoing on the polished floor. Her palms still trembled at the memory. She had endured countless rumors about James's alleged affairs, but facing Bella in her own home while pregnant was an indescribable blow. A gentle knock interrupted her thoughts. It was James, looking exhausted. Dark circles rimmed his eyes, and his usually impeccable suit was wrinkled. He stepped into the room, carrying an air of remorse that Sophie had never seen so visibly before. "Sophie, we need to talk," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never wanted you to see Bella like that. She's out of control." Sophie fought back tears, anger surging in her chest. "Out of control? James, she was in our house. She threw a teacup and threatened me. Indirectly, she threatened our child." James nodded, rubbing his forehead. "Yes, I know. I'm sorry. I tried to end things with her before, but Bella can be unstable. She keeps insisting we have a future. I admit I was weak. This affair was a lapse in judgment that went on far too long." "Lapse in judgment," Sophie repeated, her voice shaking. "James, I'm pregnant. You think you can wipe this away with an apology because you feel guilty now?" Their conversation spiraled into tension and raised voices. The foundation of their trust, already riddled with cracks, now threatened to crumble entirely. Sophie wanted to scream, to throw something and mirror the chaos she felt inside. But the baby she carried anchored her rage. Her hand automatically drifted to her belly, as though soothing the life within might also calm her own storm. James dropped to his knees and touched Sophie's stomach gently. "I'll do whatever it takes to protect our child. To protect you. You have to believe me." Sophie closed her eyes, exhaustion and heartbreak mingling into a single, heavy knot in her chest. She had no ready forgiveness to offer him, but neither did she have the strength to cast him out. She needed time to think, to gather herself. Finally, she spoke quietly, her words cautious. "I don't know how to move forward from this, but for the baby's sake, I want to try. If you can promise me that you'll do everything in your power to keep Bella away, fix this maybe, just maybe, we can find a path forward." James nodded, his eyes wet with regret. "I promise." In the following days, Redwood Mansion settled into an uneasy peace. James instructed security never to let Bella in again. He cut off all communication with her, changing phone numbers and emails. Sophie, wanting to protect her marriage, appreciated the effort but remained unconvinced that Bella Lansing would just fade away. Indeed, Bella did not vanish. Though blocked from the mansion, she began calling James's office repeatedly, circumventing secretaries and leaving cryptic messages. She also started sending letters to Sophie typed and unsigned, but unmistakably from her filled with threats, laced with jealousy and dark insinuations of vengeance. Sophie kept these hidden in a drawer, not wanting to upset James further, but each letter chipped away at her already fraught sense of security. Meanwhile, Karen Smith discreetly supported Sophie. She accompanied her to prenatal checkups, ensuring Sophie remained calm, well-nourished, and focused on her health. Karen was furious at James, but decided not to confront him directly. Sophie's fragile emotional state was the priority. One afternoon, Karen saw Sophie reading another letter, her eyes wide with fear. "These letters have to stop," Karen whispered firmly, placing a comforting hand on Sophie's shoulder. "We need to show these to James or the police." Sophie pressed her lips together and shook her head, tears glistening. "I don't want more drama. I just want my life to be peaceful for the baby's sake. Each day that passes without Bella turning up on my doorstep feels like a fragile victory. If I involve the police, this will explode into a scandal." Karen sighed, recalling how newspapers and online tabloids had feasted on Redwood Mansion rumors in the past. Sophie had always hated public drama. "All right," Karen said softly, "but promise me if something more serious happens, we'll do something about it." In the subsequent days, Sophie found some comfort in her old routines. She reread her favorite novels, strolled through the rose garden, and wrote letters to distant relatives. James even tried to reignite the warmth in their marriage, cooking her favorite meals or reading baby books beside her. Yet, an undercurrent of anxiety remained, for they both sensed Bella was not someone to bow gracefully. And they were right. The Redwood family's respite came to an abrupt end when Bella cornered Sophie at an upscale charity event hosted by the influential Sarah Richards Foundation. Held at the prestigious Crystal Hall downtown, it was a night of glamorous gowns, glittering chandeliers, and carefully orchestrated philanthropy. Guests sipped champagne while discussing everything from new hospital wings to museum expansions. Sophie had reluctantly agreed to appear, determined to maintain a facade of normalcy. She wore a flowing emerald green maternity gown that accentuated her growing belly. James had insisted on accompanying her, but a last-minute crisis at his company forced him to arrive later than planned. So, Karen Smith stood by Sophie's side as they navigated the marble-floored venue, politely greeting donors and old acquaintances. Just as Sophie turned to admire an elaborate ice sculpture near the buffet table, she felt a chilling presence behind her. It was Bella Lansing, dressed in a fiery red gown with a plunging neckline. She looked like the personification of danger. Shock and anger churned in Sophie's stomach, but she tried to keep her composure. Karen stiffened, sensing trouble. "Bella," Sophie began quietly, "you shouldn't be here." Bella gave a saccharine smile. "Oh, am I not allowed to care about sick children and worthy causes?" she asked, her eyes glittering with feigned innocence. "Besides, I'm a donor. I have as much right to be here as anyone else, dear Sophie." Karen stepped forward protectively. "If you've come to create a scene, I suggest you rethink that. This is neither the time nor the place." Leaning in, Bella whispered so only Sophie and Karen could hear, her voice hardening. "I'm actually here to see you, Sophie. I need you to understand something. James may have blocked me on every device he owns, but he'll never truly be rid of me. The sooner you accept that, the better." Sophie's heart pounded. "What do you want?" Bella's expression twisted with scorn. "For you to step aside. Once that baby is born, you can get a divorce, or you can stay his wife on paper. I couldn't care less. But James is going to be in my life. I'm sick of these little roadblocks you keep putting up." Karen seethed. "You're delusional. James has already made his choice." Bella laughed, the sound as sharp as broken glass. "You really think you've won, don't you?" She glanced at Sophie's belly. "That child might be a Redwood heir, but I can give James what he truly craves: excitement, passion, the thrill of living on the edge. There's more to life than baby booties and nursery paint." Hot tears pricked Sophie's eyes. She despised crying in public, especially in front of Bella. "You don't understand what love is," Sophie managed, her voice trembling. "You're talking about cheap thrills, a fantasy. Life is bigger than that." Bella moved in closer, her voice dropping to a menacing quiet. Let me make myself perfectly clear. If you don't let James go, I'll do more than just crash your charity gatherings. Your child will never know peace. I have resources, information, and plenty of ways to make your life very, very difficult. Karen couldn't hold back any longer. Are you threatening her unborn baby now? You're sick. Sophie placed a hand on Karen's arm, trying to keep her friend from escalating the confrontation. Fear laced her every word as she responded to Bella's ultimatum. That's enough. Leave me alone. Leave my child alone. Then walk away, Bella hissed. Because I won't stop until I get what's mine. With that, Bella turned and vanished into the crowd, leaving Sophie trembling. A wave of nausea overtook her. She clutched Karen's arm to steady herself, scanning the room for James. She saw him rushing in through the entrance, his eyes scanning faces as if looking for her. As soon as he spotted Sophie's stricken expression, he hurried over, pulling her into a tight embrace. What happened? James asked, glancing uneasily at Karen, who was visibly upset. Bella was here, Karen answered, frowning. She threatened Sophie. She threatened the baby. James's face darkened, fury roaring within him. He gently helped Sophie out of the ballroom, ignoring the curious stares of onlookers. Outside, they stood on the grand steps leading down to the circular driveway, the city lights shimmering around them like silent witnesses to the drama unfolding. I'll handle this, James told Sophie, clenching his jaw. Bella won't get anywhere near you or our child. But as the limo pulled up, Sophie could only recall Bella's venomous words. I won't stop until I get what's mine. Fear and uncertainty crept deeper into her heart. Despite James's vow, she sensed a far larger confrontation looming on the horizon. The next morning at Redwood Mansion was bleak. Rain drummed against the tall windows, casting gray shadows across the hallways. In the master bedroom, Sophie struggled to compose herself, replaying Bella's threat in her mind. Each time, the anxiety rose like a tide, threatening to engulf her. The life inside her needed calm, needed stability, yet she felt anything but stable. James, draped in a robe, paced near the fireplace, a phone clutched in his hand. He was seething at every missed call Bella had made to his business associates, even to journalists he knew. She was apparently dropping malicious hints, stirring gossip about Redwood family secrets. He had used his influence to block some rumors, but not all. Once a scandal had a whiff of authenticity, the tabloids sank their teeth in, refusing to let go. Karen arrived, bringing homemade soup and her usual calming presence. She found the married couple in a state of fragile truce, marooned in their shared heartbreak and anxiety. She insisted that Sophie stay in bed, reassuring her that stress could harm the baby. Sophie, Karen said, setting the soup tray beside the bed. Whatever Bella tries, remember that you have friends and resources. You're not alone in this. James finally stopped pacing. Karen's right, he said, turning to Sophie. We have to fight this, not cower in fear. Sophie swallowed hard. I'm just so tired, James. Tired of all the whispers, the threats, the shame of it. It's draining, and I only want to take care of myself and the baby. Nodding, James stood resolute. I'm meeting with my legal team today. We'll get a restraining order if we have to. Bella's crossing too many lines. That afternoon, James stormed into his downtown law firm, Redwood and King, where an entire division handled his personal affairs. His top attorney, Laura Green, greeted him with a worried look. Over the next 2 hours, James laid out the details of Bella's intrusions, her threats, and her past refusal to accept any settlement. Laura took copious notes, her eyebrows knitting in concern. Legally, Laura began, we can file for a restraining order. But Bella hasn't made direct threats of physical harm in a way that's easily documented beyond the confrontation at the charity gala. Witnesses like Karen could help, but Bella's defense could revolve around claiming it was merely a misunderstanding. Given her cunning, she may spin it as jealousy on Sophie's part. James clenched his fists. I'll get more evidence. Whatever it takes. Laura nodded. We can also serve her with a cease and desist notice, demanding she stop contacting you, your associates, or the media regarding your personal life. But it's just paper if she chooses to ignore it. Leaving the law firm, James felt both anger and frustration brimming. Money could buy a top-notch legal team, but it couldn't guarantee peace of mind. On his drive home, he stared out the tinted windows at the bustling city, recalling the vow he had made to Sophie. He intended to keep it, no matter the cost. Meanwhile, back at Redwood Mansion, Karen invited over a handful of Sophie's close friends for a peaceful luncheon, hoping to lift her spirits. Among them was Emily Davies, a warm-hearted woman who had known Sophie since their college days. Over tea, they swapped light-hearted stories of their youth, trying to steer Sophie away from the swirling chaos surrounding Bella. Midway through the meal, Sophie's phone buzzed. Absent-mindedly, she picked it up, only to read another threatening message. "Are you enjoying your little tea party? Don't get too comfortable. We both know James is just biding his time." Sophie's face went pale. Karen noticed immediately and signaled the other friends to keep the conversation flowing while she pulled Sophie aside. "Is it Bella again?" Karen asked gently, taking Sophie's phone. Sophie nodded, tears welling up. "She just won't stop. What does she want from me? She already has James's attention. Why keep torturing me?" Karen wrapped an arm around her. "Because she's furious that James won't give in to her. She knows you're pregnant, vulnerable, and she's exploiting that." Trembling, Sophie took a shaky breath. "She's playing mind games. I'm so scared, Karen." Despite Karen's attempts to reassure her, the day's small joys evaporated. Sophie spent the rest of the afternoon in bed, curtains drawn. Outside, the storm had passed, but in her heart, the tempest raged on. Later that evening, James returned, looking drained. He crawled into bed beside Sophie, gently rubbing her back. "I'm sorry for all of this," he whispered, his voice thick with regret. She closed her eyes, grateful for his warmth, but still harboring a wound that refused to heal. "Just promise me we'll get through it," she whispered. His reply was quiet but firm. "We will." Yet, even as he held her, James couldn't shake the foreboding thought that Bella Lansing would force a confrontation more explosive than any they had seen so far. Summer arrived, bringing with it a series of high-profile social events that James and Sophie usually attended to maintain their philanthropic image. One such affair was the annual Redwood Scholarship Dinner, organized by the Redwood Foundation to support underprivileged students seeking higher education. Held at the luxurious Grand Regent Hotel, it drew local politicians, celebrities, and beneficiaries from across the state. Determined to show a united front, James and Sophie decided they would not be cowed by Bella's threats. Clad in a flowing white maternity gown, Sophie braced herself for the stares and the hush of whispers about the Redwood scandal. James hovered protectively at her side, offering his arm for support. Cameras flashed as they arrived, capturing the pregnant wife and the millionaire husband, while reporters shouted questions about rumored tensions in their marriage. Inside the lavish ballroom, tables were set with gold-rimmed plates and polished silverware. Centerpieces of fresh lilies adorned each setting, and the soft glow of chandeliers lent an air of refinement. Speeches commenced, praising the Redwood Foundation's impact. Sophie managed a small smile as she listened to the stories of students who had overcome adversity with the help of scholarships. For a moment, hope and positivity overshadowed her personal troubles. Then Bella appeared, dressed in a black cocktail gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. She strode in confidently, flanked by a couple of local socialites. A hush spread through the crowd, heads turning to see what would happen. Clearly, Bella had an uncanny ability to worm her way into events, no matter how exclusive or tightly guarded. James tightened his arm around Sophie's waist. "She won't cause a scene here," he whispered. "Too many cameras. Too many important people." Sophie's hand instinctively went to her belly. "Don't underestimate her," she cautioned, remembering Bella's relentless intrusions. As the night progressed, Bella kept her distance until James was called on stage to deliver the keynote address. Sophie stood at the foot of the stage, politely applauding him. He spoke eloquently about the power of education to transform lives, drawing cheers and appreciative nods from the audience. Proud of her husband's philanthropic vision, Sophie felt a spark of renewed admiration for the man she had once trusted without doubt. When James concluded his speech, applause thundered through the ballroom. He stepped down, intending to walk back to Sophie. That was when Bella seized her chance. She intercepted James in the aisle between tables, effectively cornering him. With the entire ballroom watching, she leaned close, her expression a mix of desperation and fury. "You've ignored my calls, blocked my messages," Bella spat quietly, still managing to keep a plastic smile for the cameras. "Enough is enough, James." James stiffened. "You need to leave, Bella. I've made it clear there's no future for us." Sophie, witnessing the encounter, tried to step forward, but the throng of guests moving through the aisle blocked her. She saw Bella grip James's arm, her nails biting into the expensive fabric of his suit. "You made promises to me," Bella insisted, tears now glittering in her eyes as though heartbreak fueled her anger. "You can't just discard me. Not after everything." James wrenched free. "I'm sorry I ever got involved with you. It was a mistake, one I deeply regret. Now, please leave." Bella's composure cracked. She lashed out, her voice rising in hysterical fury. "You think you can humiliate me in front of all these people?" Her voice carried across the ballroom, drawing the attention of curious bystanders. "I'm the reason your nights were exciting. I'm the one who gave you an escape from your boring routine. And you repay me by flaunting your pregnant wife." Sophie finally managed to push through the crowd. "Bella, that's enough," she yelled, tears forming in her own eyes. "You've done nothing but bring chaos into our lives." Suddenly, Bella slapped Sophie. The crack echoed across the hush that had descended over the ballroom. Sophie staggered backward, disoriented. Gasps and shocked murmurs rippled around them. Security guards rushed forward, but James moved faster. His fury exploded. In a single, reflexive motion, he slapped Bella across the fascia, harsh, resounding blow that left her stumbling. A collective gasp filled the air. Bella's hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with a mix of shock and humiliation. For a moment, she looked ready to retaliate, but the presence of the cameras, the cell phones capturing every second, and the sea of onlookers froze her. She couldn't hide the ugly truth anymore. She had crossed a line, and James had publicly and violently rejected her. Trembling, Sophie placed a protective hand over her belly, still reeling from the slap she had received. James quickly turned to her, fear replacing his rage. "Are you okay?" he whispered, gently touching her face. Sophie nodded numbly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. In the background, the master of ceremonies tried to regain control, instructing security to escort Bella out. The crowd parted, cameras still flashing, as Bella, humiliated and furious, was led away. But not before she threw a final, venomous glare at Sophie, mouthing silent words of rage that promised retribution. As the doors closed behind her, a tense murmur fell over the attendees. James guided Sophie out of the ballroom, ignoring the reporters' frantic questions. Karen Smith, who had witnessed everything from afar, hurried to join them. The Redwood Scholarship Dinner, meant to be a celebration of hope, had turned into a public spectacle of betrayal and violence. Outside, the cool night air hit them. Sophie still trembled from the shock of Bella's blow. James held her tightly, tears gleaming in his own eyes. "I'm sorry," he kept repeating, though whether he was apologizing for the affair, the slap, or the entire horrifying situation, it was unclear. The slap at the Grand Regent Hotel became the talk of the town overnight. Viral videos spread across social media, showing Bella's confrontation, Sophie's shock, and James's explosive reaction. Internet forums, gossip blogs, and tabloids poured out articles with headlines like "Millionaire James Redwood slaps mistress in public" and "Pregnant wife attacked at charity gala." Shocking scenes unfold. Sophie tried to shield herself from the media frenzy, staying within Redwood Mansion. But even there, the phones rang incessantly. Anonymous reporters loitered outside the gates, their cameras poised for a statement or a sensational shot. James's business partners flooded his inbox, concerned about his image. The Redwood Foundation board members scheduled an emergency meeting to address the PR fallout. Investors grew nervous, and stock prices in Redwood Industries wavered. Worse yet, Bella Lansing was not content to disappear. She released a scathing statement to a major gossip blog, accusing James of unprovoked assault and painting Sophie as a manipulative wife who had driven him to violence. She even hinted that the Redwood family had bribed the hotel security to keep the footage favorable to them. The swirling rumors only darkened James and Sophie's reputation in some circles, though others rallied behind Sophie, calling Bella a homewrecker who had finally faced the consequences of her actions. Karen Smith visited daily to check on Sophie's emotional and physical well-being. She found Sophie on the sofa, ankles swollen, eyes red from crying, flipping through the news channels out of macabre, need to stay informed. Each broadcast replayed the same few seconds of Bella's slap, followed by James's retaliatory strike. The entire Redwood tragedy was under a public microscope. One afternoon, Karen switched off the TV, kneeling beside Sophie. "You can't keep watching that clip. It's poison, feeding your anxiety," she said gently. Sophie's voice came out hoarse. "I know, but I can't help it. I never imagined our lives would become some public circus. My baby, what kind of world am I bringing them into?" Karen squeezed Sophie's hand. "You're bringing them into a world where they'll be loved and protected. That's what matters. Don't let Bella's bitterness overshadow that." James, meanwhile, spent long hours strategizing with his legal and PR teams. He held press conferences, asserting that Bella was a trespasser who had assaulted his pregnant wife first. He expressed regret for his own violent reaction, but maintained it was to protect Sophie and their unborn child. Lawyers worked tirelessly to compile witness statements. Several attendees of the scholarship dinner testified that Bella had thrown the first blow, reinforcing James's self-defense argument. Bella, however, refused to stay quiet. A new wave of rumors emerged from her inner circle. Allegations that James had once funded Bella's music career, that he had promised to leave Sophie for her, that he had physically intimidated her in the past. There was zero proof, but the media latched onto any fresh morsel, fueling an endless cycle of speculation. In Redwood Mansion, the tension thickened. Sophie worried about James's short temper. She understood why he struck Bella, but the magnitude of that public display haunted her. If he could lose control so quickly in front of so many people, what else was he capable of? Late at night, she stared at the ceiling, wrestling with that disturbing question, guilt coursing through her for even doubting him. James felt her distance. He'd reach for her in bed, but she'd sometimes pull away, claiming exhaustion. Each time, a silent rift widened between them. On the surface, they presented a united front, apologized publicly for his reaction, and she stood by him as the wronged wife, but behind closed doors, a coldness grew, fostered by stress, sorrow, and the relentless intrusion of Bella Lansing into their lives. In the midst of this turmoil, there was a glimmer of hope. Sophie's next prenatal appointment showed the baby was healthy and on track. Hearing the strong heartbeat gave Sophie a moment of emotional reprieve. She teared up when the doctor assured her everything looked good, momentarily forgetting the outside world. James held her hand in the examination room, marveling at the ultrasound images. In that instant, it was just them and their child, a fleeting reminder of what really mattered. Yet, as soon as they returned home, the phone call started again. James's personal assistant informed them that Bella was now threatening to sue for emotional damages and defamation, claiming the Redwood family had conspired against her. Although the lawsuit was likely baseless, the potential legal headaches weighed heavily on them all. One night, as thunder rumbled in the distance, James stared out a window at the sprawling lawn, lost in thought. Sophie approached him tentatively. They hadn't spoken more than a few words all evening. Placing a hand on his shoulder, she said softly, "I'm scared, James." He turned, his eyes reflecting the stormy skies. "Me too," he admitted. For the first time in weeks, vulnerability etched his features. "I don't know how to protect you from someone who seems to have no limits." They embraced, clinging to each other like survivors of a shipwreck, praying for calmer seas. But somewhere out there, Bella Lansing lurked, plotting her next move, determined to tear down whatever stability they managed to rebuild. Weeks rolled on, bringing Sophie closer to her due date. The Redwood Mansion, once a symbol of authority and comfort, now felt like a fortress under siege. With paparazzi at the gates and Bella's name still swirling in tabloids, it seemed no refuge could truly block out the world. One evening, James's phone buzzed incessantly. Reluctantly, he checked a string of panicked messages from Lisa Farnsworth, a close business associate with strong ties to Redwood Industries. "James, urgent. Call me." She rarely panicked, so James stepped into his study, shutting the door behind him. He returned 15 minutes later, looking pale. Sophie, who was reading a baby book in the living room, immediately sensed something was amiss. "What happened?" she asked, tension coiling inside her. James sank into the armchair across from her. "Lisa says Bella contacted the Redwood Foundation's biggest donors. She's feeding them lies, claiming I used charity funds to buy her gifts, that the foundation is just a front for my personal indulgences. The donors are threatening to pull out if these rumors aren't addressed immediately." Sophie's jaw dropped. "That's absurd. Everyone knows the Redwood Foundation is legitimate. We have audited finances so many times. Bella provided falsified documents. Apparently, even if they're fake, it casts doubt," James said, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "We have an emergency board meeting tomorrow. The fallout could be huge if donors believe her." The conversation was cut short by a sudden crash from the front foyer. Sophie gasped, clutching the arms of her chair. James shot to his feet, motioning for her to stay back. Hearts hammering, they crept into the foyer, where one of the tall windows lay smashed. Shards of glass scattered on the floor. Their security detail, alerted by the noise, rushed inside. Something had flown through the broken window, a small bundle of papers tied with a rock. It skidded across the marble floor. One of the guards snatched it, carefully removing the rock to reveal a note on top. "You thought one slap would silence me? Think again." Sophie's vision blurred with fright. She leaned against James, both of them trembling. That was not all. The bundle contained intimate photos of James with Bella from months ago, damning evidence of their affair. Mixed in were bizarre, menacing images. One showed a knife placed next to a sonogram picture, presumably stolen from Sophie's social media or hospital files. Another was a blurred snapshot of Redwood Mansion's front gate with Bella's mocking scrawl, "See you soon." Security fanned out to search the grounds, but found no sign of Bella or anyone suspicious. Sophie retreated to the living room couch, tears streaming down her cheeks. Fear for her unborn child surged anew. James was livid, his hands shaking with rage. He demanded the head of security double surveillance, call the police, and install more cameras. When the cops arrived, they took statements, bagged the photos, and promised to increase patrols in the area. However, one officer quietly confided to James, "If Ms. Lansing wasn't caught in the act, this may not lead to an immediate arrest." He gestured to the photos. "But keep that evidence. It might help build a stronger case for a restraining order." "She's not stopping," Sophie whispered to James after the officers left. "Even with the police, the legal threats, everything. What if she comes again? What if she actually tries to hurt me or the baby?" James pulled her close, though he too radiated despair. "I don't know," he said, his voice hollow, "but I swear to God, I won't let her touch a hair on your head." Throughout that night, Redwood Mansion remained on high alert. Guards patrolled the perimeter while cameras watched every angle. Sophie barely slept, haunted by images of Bella, the broken window, and the threatening photographs. She eventually dozed off near dawn, lulled by James's presence as he paced the room, keeping watch himself. Morning brought a harried swirl of phone calls as James attempted to reassure Redwood Foundation donors and business partners. He fought to salvage the trust that Bella's manipulations had undermined. Over coffee, Karen Smith arrived to lend emotional support. She found Sophie haggard, her eyes puffy from sleeplessness. Karen's usual warmth faltered at the sight of the broken window. "We can't go on like this," Karen said quietly, hugging Sophie. "Bella's running a terror campaign." Sophie gave a weak nod. I feel like a prisoner in my own home. This can't be good for the baby. Karen turned, determined. We're calling the police again, showing them the new evidence. This is beyond petty threats. It's criminal harassment. Yet, even as they prepared to do so, Sophie realized that Bella's vendetta had become more than just an affair gone wrong. It was a full-blown crusade against the Redwood family, fueled by rage, envy, and a twisted sense of revenge. Sophie feared what new horrors Bella might conjure if no one could restrain her, and she prayed it wouldn't escalate any further. With each passing day, Sophie's pregnancy neared its final stage, her due date hovering just a few weeks away. The stress took its toll, manifesting in sleepless nights and bouts of anxiety so severe that her obstetrician began worrying about preterm labor. Alarmed, James made a radical decision. He arranged for Sophie to temporarily relocate to a discreet countryside estate owned by a close family friend, far from the paparazzi and presumably out of Bella's reach. It seemed like the safest option until the baby arrived. Initially, Sophie resisted. She was tired of hiding, tired of letting Bella dictate her life. But a near panic attack convinced her that the unborn child's well-being trumped her pride. At dawn, a black SUV whisked her away, accompanied by Karen Smith and a small security detail. James stayed behind to handle the Redwood Foundation crisis and to coordinate the legal action against Bella. Though the separation pained them, both knew it was necessary. The countryside estate, belonging to an old confidant named Alexander Carter, was tucked away at the end of a tree-lined road. Its sprawling gardens, complete with fruit trees and a small lake, offered a tranquility that Redwood Mansion could no longer provide. Sophie found solace in the rustling leaves and the quiet chirping of birds. No cameras lurked behind hedges. No broken windows or threatening notes awaited her here. Karen settled into a guest room next to Sophie's, ensuring she had company at all hours. A private nurse arrived daily to check on Sophie's vitals. Gradually, Sophie felt some tension ease from her shoulders. The fresh air and the knowledge that Bella was miles away gave her a semblance of peace. Still, Bella's specter remained. Every phone call from James brought updates on new allegations, new rumors, new letters from Bella's so-called lawyer. Sophie tried not to dwell on it too much. She listened but focused on her breathing exercises, her prenatal stretches, the baby's gentle kicks. She was determined to protect the life growing within her. One quiet afternoon, Karen found Sophie sitting on the porch swing, gazing across the lake. A gentle breeze tugged at her hair. "You look more relaxed than you have in weeks," Karen observed, handing her a glass of lemonade. Sophie gave a half smile. "I almost feel normal here. If it weren't for Bella's threats and the media storm, this place would be heaven." Karen sat down beside her. "James says he's making progress. The donors are starting to believe his side of the story. The Redwood Foundation might weather this storm." Sophie exhaled, relief flickering across her face. "That's good. I just can't wait for the day Bella's out of our lives for good." Karen nodded. "He's also refiling the restraining order with the new evidence, and the police might have enough to bring harassment charges soon." Buoyed by hope, Sophie started to envision a future free from Bella's torment. She imagined bringing her newborn back to Redwood Mansion, restoring some semblance of normalcy. Yet, the sense of calm was shattered a few days later when a minor security breach occurred on the estate. A groundskeeper found footprints around the back fence, along with cigarette butts and a small piece of torn black fabric. No one could confirm if it was Bella's doing, but the timing and circumstances were suspicious. Alarmed, Karen insisted they remain indoors after dusk, and the security detail doubled their rounds. Sophie's anxiety skyrocketed again. The idea that Bella might track her down here, violating the sanctity of this safe haven, sent shivers down her spine. She tried to dismiss it as paranoia, but the memory of that shattered window at Redwood Mansion refused to leave her mind. During a phone call, James tried to reassure her. "We don't have proof it was Bella, Sophie. She's under heavy scrutiny right now, and her every move is being watched. It could be random trespassers." But Sophie could hear the strain in his voice. Even he seemed unconvinced. Neither wanted to voice the obvious fear. Bella Lansing might be unhinged enough to continue her pursuit, risking her own exposure for the sake of revenge. For a moment, Sophie considered returning home. If Bella was going to strike, maybe Redwood Mansion, with all its upgraded security, was safer. But the memory of her panic attacks, the press outside the gates, and the incessant tension made her hesitate. The countryside estate at least offered fresh air, quiet moments, and a shield from paparazzi, a small bubble of peace, despite the new scare. Late that night, Sophie lay in bed, hands on her belly, feeling the baby shift. Each movement reminded her how precious and vulnerable life could be. She closed her eyes, silently praying for the strength to endure. In her mind's eye, she saw Bella's furious face, her threats echoing. "I won't stop until I get what's mine." Sophie pressed her lips together, fighting back tears. "You'll never get my child," she whispered into the darkness. Never. As Sophie inched closer to her due date, the Redwood family's legal measures tightened around Bella Lansing. The courts finally granted a restraining order based on multiple documented threats, witness testimonies, and a vandalism evidence at Redwood Mansion. Bella was forbidden from coming within 100 yards of James, Sophie, or any Redwood property. Violating the order would carry severe penalties. Though Bella temporarily vanished from the public eye, Sophie refused to let her guard down. Even James's tone on their phone calls changed. He sounded guarded, occasionally startled, as though expecting Bella to jump out at any moment. One evening, the call that Sophie dreaded finally came. James's frantic voice crackled on the line. "Bella's here," he gasped. She stormed the Redwood Foundation's board meeting. Security tried to stop her, but she's out of control, screaming about how I ruined her life. Sophie's heart pounded. Is she arrested? They're calling the cops, but she locked herself in the conference room. I don't know, his voice cut off amid scuffling noises. Then the call dropped. Panicked, Sophie tried calling back. No answer. She alerted Karen and their security detail. The local police were contacted, but the estate was nearly an hour's drive from the Redwood Foundation's downtown headquarters. Helpless, Sophie paced the living room, each second feeling like an eternity. Was James hurt? Was Bella armed? The possibilities gnawed at her. After what felt like a lifetime, James called back, sounding shaken but unharmed. Bella's gone. She smashed some office equipment, threatened the board members, and fled before the cops arrived. Are you okay? Sophie asked, tears of relief welling up. I'm fine, he sighed, but this proves how desperate she is. She doesn't care about restraining orders or the police. The board is furious. Some want me to press maximum charges. Others want to hush it up to avoid scandal. But I can't let her keep doing this. Sophie agreed wholeheartedly. She's spiraling. This has to end. Within 2 days, the Redwood legal team filed additional charges. This time, the police moved swiftly. An arrest warrant was issued for Bella Lansing, citing vandalism, harassment, contempt of court for violating a restraining order, and possible assault charges pending further investigation. For a while, it seemed justice might finally catch up with the mistress who had caused so much destruction. But Bella proved elusive. She didn't show up at her known addresses, and attempts to serve the warrant failed. Rumors circulated that she had left the country or gone underground. Anxiety plagued Sophie. What if Bella tried one final, desperate act against her or James? That final act arrived unexpectedly. A week later, in the middle of a quiet afternoon, a flustered groundskeeper rushed into the estate's living room, where Sophie was napping. Miss Redwood, we have a security breach at the east gate. A woman matching Bella's description just forced her car through the barrier. Shocked and terrified, Sophie sat upright. Karen, who was reading in a nearby chair, sprang to her side. Call the police, she shouted at the groundskeeper, who nodded and dashed away. Before they could fully react, a shrill yell came from outside. Sophie and Karen peeked through the window to see Bella emerging from a battered sedan, her hair wild, her eyes fierce. She brandished something in her hand, a metal rod or pipe. The security team converged on her, weapons drawn but hesitant to open fire on a seemingly unarmed woman. Where is she? Bella roared. Give me Sophie Redwood. Karen grabbed Sophie's arm, adrenaline surging. We have to get you somewhere safe. Now, Sophie's breath was ragged, her heart pounding so loud she could barely hear. She followed Karen down a hallway, leading to a back staircase that accessed an upstairs panic room. The baby inside her seemed to sense her fear, kicking furiously. As they scrambled upstairs, they heard Bella's voice echo through the corridors. She had somehow slipped past security or found another entry point. Doors slammed. Footsteps thundered. Despite the restraining order, despite the threats of arrest, Bella was not backing down. In the second-floor hallway, Bella appeared, brandishing her makeshift weapon. Sophie and Karen froze. Sophie couldn't help but stare at Bella's disheveled state, her eyes bloodshot, her makeup smeared, a feral intensity lighting her gaze. "You think you can hide from me?" Bella hissed. "You took everything from me. You stole James. You tarnished my name." Sophie's voice quivered. "Bella, please, think about what you're doing. The police are on their way. You don't want to make this worse." Bella let out a deranged laugh. "Worse? My life is already ruined. No record label will touch me. The Redwood name has blacklisted me everywhere. And you? You flaunt your perfect little family, your baby." Karen tried to intercede. "Bella, calm down. James wants nothing to do with you. You need help." Gripping the metal rod tightly, Bella advanced on Sophie. "He's mine. Do you hear me? That child you're carrying is just a ploy to keep him away from me." Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her rage never faltered. Sophie shielded her stomach with trembling hands, stepping backward until her back hit the wall. She felt cornered, physically and emotionally. Bella raised the rod, her eyes flickering with a terrifying resolve. Suddenly, a flurry of movement filled the hallway. Security guards tackled Bella from behind, wresting the rod from her grip. She shrieked, thrashing wildly. Her nails raked one guard's face, drawing blood, while another guard pinned her arms. It took 4 men to subdue her. Karen rushed to Sophie, supporting her before she collapsed to the floor. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Bella still fought against her captors, screaming, "I'll destroy you. Sophie Redwood. I'll ruin all of you." Spit flew from her lips, raw hatred etched into her features. By the time the police burst in, Bella was handcuffed and placed under arrest for violating her restraining order and attempted assault. Adrenaline coursed through Sophie as she watched Bella being dragged out, cursing and raving in front of the flashing blue and red lights. It was a moment of both profound relief and deep horror. She had narrowly escaped a physical attack from a woman consumed by obsession and fury. Paramedics checked Sophie's vitals, worried the stress could trigger early labor. Thankfully, her blood pressure stabilized. She clutched Karen's hand, tears streaming down her face, trying to process what had just happened. For months, Sophie had feared a confrontation like this, and now it was finally over. Or so she prayed, as Bella Lansing was driven away, sirens piercing the once peaceful countryside air. The night Bella was arrested, James rushed to the countryside estate. He arrived to find Sophie resting in bed, emotional exhaustion painted on her face. His heart twisted with guilt and gratitude as he wrapped her in his arms. They stayed like that for a long time, saying nothing, just breathing in the relief of Bella's absence. In the days that followed, Bella's lawyers tried to negotiate bail, but her violent assault on Sophie and trespassing at a private estate had made the case against her strong. The Redwood legal team pressed charges, determined to end the cycle of harassment once and for all. Public sympathy shifted decisively to Sophie, with once skeptical tabloids condemning Bella's unhinged behavior. Donations poured back into the Redwood Foundation. Supportive messages flooded Sophie's social media, and Redwood Industries' stock rebounded as the scandal began to close. 3 weeks later, Sophie went into labor. It happened in the early morning, a jolt of pain waking her. Karen and James rushed her to a private hospital where her doctor stood by. After hours of labor, Sophie delivered a healthy baby girl, Annabelle Redwood, named in memory of Sophie's late grandmother. Holding the tiny infant in her arms, Sophie felt a wave of love so powerful it was enough to eclipse the months of turmoil. Tears glistened in her eyes, this time from pure joy. James stood at her side, overwhelmed. He pressed a gentle kiss to Sophie's forehead. "She's perfect," he breathed, his voice trembling with emotion. The child's presence felt like a salve on all their wounds, a promise that life could move forward no matter how dark the past had been. Karen visited, bearing flowers and baby gifts, tears of happiness in her eyes. The hospital room seemed awash in warmth and celebration. Despite everything Bella Lansing had tried to destroy, this precious miracle thrived in the midst of love. They returned to Redwood Mansion 2 days later with newborn Annabelle. Sophie found a sense of redemption in each corner of the home. Where she had once cowered in fear, she now walked with her baby in her arms. Though memories of shattered windows and threatening notes still lingered, the bright coos of an infant brought hope. The darkness receded. On the day of Annabelle's baptism, family, friends, and associates gathered in Redwood Mansion's rose garden. The sun shone warmly, casting soft rays on the crowd. James cradled his daughter, gazing at Sophie with a depth of affection that neither scandal nor betrayal could ever tarnish again. Karen, the godmother, proudly stood by Sophie, tears of joy slipping down her cheeks as she listened to the pastor's blessings. Bella Lansing's name occasionally surfaced in whispers she was being held pending trial. A public persona in tatters, but for the Redwoods, that part of their lives was locked firmly in the past. As twilight draped the gardens, James and Sophie strolled hand in hand through rows of blooming roses. Baby Annabelle snuggled in Sophie's arms. They paused, breathing in the fragrant air. A gentle breeze rustled the petals, carrying the promise of a fresh chapter. Sophie looked up at James. "We made it," she whispered. James nodded, his eyes shining. "We did, and I'll spend every day making things right with you and our daughter." Sophie smiled, pressing her cheek to her husband's shoulder. "Welcome home, Annabelle," she said softly, gazing at the tiny face that symbolized hope and renewal. "You'll never know how fiercely we fought for your future, but I promise you this, our family will always stand strong." A life once shrouded in scandal now shines with the promise of new beginnings. After enduring months of fear, threats, and heartbreak, Sophie and James Redwood can finally cradle their infant daughter without constant dread. Bella Lansing's arrest brings legal closure, but more importantly, it frees Sophie from the torment of looking over her shoulder. Their journey has been fraught with betrayal, shattered trust, and public humiliation, yet love and courage ultimately prevail. Support from friends like Karen Smith, combined with unwavering resolve, turned a household under siege into a sanctuary of hope. As the Redwoods step forward with renewed faith in each other, they embrace not just the relief of Bella's downfall, but also a powerful reminder. Real strength emerges when facing the darkest trials. If you found their story gripping, be sure to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more captivating drama. Your support truly matters and helps us bring more stories like this to you.